So I just came from seeing the second most anticipated movie of the spring season, which was The Backrooms. I am not in the social circle, so I had no idea about what the backrooms were until, for some reason, I did a deep dive into liminal spaces, which led me to the backrooms. As far as liminal spaces, I think I was seeking out something for nostalgia purposes, those pastel colors, those muted down vibes. Everything moved a lot slower. Of course, digital was almost non existent at that point. It was a very new era as far as the digital realm, so it wasn't all encompassing in everyone's lives. And I was really seeking out that kind of energy, which led me to liminal spaces, which led me to the lore of the backrooms. In case you don't know what they are, it is based on a Reddit photo, I think, of an old room in like an abandoned furniture store. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. And the poster basically was like something like in the nature of, this is what the back rooms look like. And I think it really hit home with a lot of people, again because of that uncanny nostalgia, meaning everything about it, that particular picture or any kind of like back rooms looking, liminal space looking photo, looks like it, you remember it, it's familiar, it's safe. It takes, people of a certain era back to a time when life just felt more comfortable. You knew what tomorrow was going to bring. You knew what the next 5 minutes was going to bring. You knew what next week was going to bring. You knew what next summer was going to bring. We were never living under this constant stressor point. The backrooms nostalgia, kind of puts, us in a certain safe space. But it's also uncanny because you feel uneasy at the same time because everything looks okay, but also like there's something not quite right. You can't put your finger on it, but something's not quite right. So your mind and your essence are kind of like going back and forth between feeling all safe and fuzzy and what am I missing? What am I not seeing? What is lurking in the next 5 seconds? Hence the back room. So let's get back to the backrooms itself, the actual YouTube series by Kane Parsons, aka Kane Pixels, that he started, a few years ago. I watched a really good full story, full lore recap of it to catch me up because I had never heard of it, as I said. I'll try to find that link and put it in the description because it was really good in catching up someone like me who is really interested in all this stuff. I love all things creepy, I can't even talk. Creepy, mysterious, conspiratorial, all of it. I want to know all the things. So, all the cosmic things that we don't quite catch on to, that world over top of a world, that world behind the world. I love all that stuff. So of course, as soon as I learned about, again, liminal spaces and backrooms, and of course this YouTube series, I jumped right on board. Definitely took a sip of the Kool-Aid. So we went to go see the movie today. It was exactly as I expected. And I had a really good discussion with the person that I went to see. Of course, we were kind of like quietly chatting back and forth to each other as different things were being uncovered in the actual story plot as it was playing. And then afterwards, we had a nice like 5 to 10 minute chat as the closing credits were rolling. So again, it was exactly how I, in particular, expected it to be based on what I knew of the lore overall. However, as I said, I don't really go through the social circle, but the channels and, the persons that I do follow, there has been some chatter back and forth about some complaints about the back rooms. Mostly because the backrooms made the error of coming out after another unsuspecting gem of a movie, Obsession. I have not seen Obsession, but I've watched like a few recaps on it from a few different, POVs. It looks like a movie I would like to watch. However, gore level seems to be on like top 90%. So I probably won't be watching it, but I am really enjoying hearing about the storyline itself. But because that was such a phenomenal, unexpected, phenomenally received movie, and then the Backrooms came out, so people of horror, horror fans are going into it immediately comparing the two, which they should not do. Based on what I've learned about Obsession and what I know and have also seen about the actual Backrooms series, which has just been converted into a big screen horror film, these are two very different types of horror subgenres. You cannot compare the two. It's kind of like comparing True Blood to the Vampire Diaries. Yes, both horror, both, rooted in like some kind of dark romance, gothicness, but carried forth two very different ways, tones totally different, as with these two movies, Obsession and The Backrooms. From what I know of Obsession, it's basically, a cap nod to the modern dating scene, which I hear is terrible because, younger persons don't know how to interact with each other, and then they do. And then, because they're so used to kind of living on screen, when they get in person, things are like not as expected. And then it turns into this own, unique personal horror stories, mini horror stories that are being carried out right now. So again, that is, if you're a younger person or just a person who is a fan of just strict horror, jump scares, gore, and an actual plot that makes sense, you can follow along with, that's coherent, is a bonus. So that's what I'm getting from Obsession. It just so happens that it had a great plot that really keys into the modern dating scene, but the tone of it is very strict, fast paced, jump scares, scenes of, people being attacked in very like diabolical and like vicious ways, which is totally different from the tone of the backstories. And that's on purpose because the backstories, again, is like this conspiratorial horror. So it moves slower, not as slow as like a Twin Peaks, but step it up a few notches, and not as confusing as Twin Peaks either. You definitely can catch what's going on, in the moment. You don't have to rewatch it, So now that we understand that those are two different movies intended, for the most part, two different audiences, I would say, again, Obsession, strict horror fans, and Backrooms, more like art house horror fans. Not as bad as, what's that movie that everybody, Midsummer, not like a Midsummer. Again, think of more like a Twin Peaksy kind of thing, not as slow burn, and not as confusing. Step it up a few steps. But now that we're understanding, we're stepping into two different realms. Now we know what to sit down and watch in front of us. So I'll just quickly go through the plot. Spoiler alert. So to get the full lore, I definitely suggest watching a recap of Kane Parcel, Kane Pixels, the Backrooms, like the full story. But just to catch you up real quick, there's a tech, I believe it's supposed to be an MRI company. Again, all of this is nostalgia based. It's set back in the very early 90s. The movie itself is set in 1990. I feel like the Backrooms YouTube series is set a little further along the timeline, which would make sense because I wanted to get to this point, but I'm going to say it now. The point that I wanted to get to later, but I'm going to say now, is that this is just one story that we find in the Backrooms. It's not even a story that's in the YouTube series. This is a whole separate storyline that's incorporated into the Backrooms series as somewhat of a standalone, but definitely syncs up with the main storyline. So that's something else that people need to keep in mind when they go to see this, is that you can view this as just one story in the Backrooms. As we've seen, or if you ever get a chance to watch the web series or recaps, many different people drop into the Backrooms. Whatever this dimension is, whatever Async, the MRI company that mistakenly, as with Stranger Things, opened up a portal to somewhere where something is dwelling there. This is just one story of many people who find themselves trapped in this very cosmic horror space. So many people over this time period of like 1990 to like 94, I believe, inadvertently stepped through unseen portals, doorways, whatever you want to call it, into this living space. This space is constantly building and expanding itself. It's very uncanny because initially it will take on the form of like an empty office building of old, the yellow pastel colors, the embedded overhead fluorescent lights, random objects you would find in a standard office of old times. Not like the, white, brightly lit open office spaces of now. It's a very mellow setting when you first step into it. Again, it's a shock and a awe because, you have a lady that was in her garage and found like a little portal in there. You found some kids that were, videotaping themselves doing like, I think, a mini movie. And one of them is like moving backwards as he's holding the camera, and he like steps down into the concrete and enters the back room. So everybody kind of gets to this mysterious space in their own way. As, noted, Async inadvertently tapped into this, but because they're, a professional company with like lots of scientists and engineers, they immediately put safeguards up. They put nice solid metal doors, again, recalling like a Stranger Things, like to keep whatever dimension that is, whatever entity that is, sealed on the other side. However, you have all of these unsuspecting citizens, I believe this is in like the California area, who are just like wandering into this crap, like totally unawares. And that's where we have our main character, Clark, in the movie. Clark has recently, he's not divorced, but he has been put out of his house. For a reason, we'll hear, him going over and with his therapy, with his therapist, Mary. He's controlling a lot of rage over that. He feels it's very unfair, that his wife, whom he supports financially, who's still living in the house that he's paying for, still going to law school that he's paying for, at this point wants nothing to do with him. And he's literally living in the furniture store that he owns and manages. So he's suppressing a lot in himself. And that is the reason why he's going to visit with Mary to kind of work through his whole situation. Now, Mary, though she has this very professional facade, she's very like calm tone, very mellow. And she's talking to Clark and trying to get him to get to that point of why his rage both activated during, his fallout with his wife one night, in the middle of the night, and why she threw him out. And also to try to get him to find an alternate path to that rage. But Clark is like, he's just built like that. He apologizes for when he gets upset to Mary during their session. And he says, this is the reason why he kind of keeps people at bay. He's just built to be cruel to people. Therefore, he doesn't really like to have close relationships with them, which is probably how his marriage ended up, getting to the point that it did, where his wife told him to hit the bricks. He's living in his own store. So one night, Let me back up a little bit. So Clark has an assistant manager, and they've been noticing like these power surges at the furniture shop. So they get an electrician to come in. The electrician goes to like the power box, the circuit breaker power box, and is like, yeah, who installed this? This is a mess. And they kind of like flash around on things kind of really quick, but I can kind of see, like that sticker that they put over the switches so you know what goes with what, you know what I mean, on, off. That looks like it's upside down. But in addition to that, again, they flash on it like that part super quick, and I'm pretty sure that sticker is like upside down. But the main point is that there's these extra switches just kind of like shoved to the bottom of the circuit breaker. And the electrician is like, what the F is this? He's like, this shouldn't even, and they're like, kind of like askew. They look like very askew. They're kind of like diagonal. And he's like, this shouldn't even be here. And Clark is like, is this what's causing like these power surges? And the guy is like, this shouldn't even connect to anything. The spot that is in should not connect to anything. It shouldn't be doing any kind of effect electric wise. So, of course, to experiment, they start flicking those extra weirdly mashed in buttons. Nothing happens. So it's like, call it mysterious, whatever. So the plot goes on. So one night, keep in mind, Clark is living in his store. He's watching TV on like a living room setup. So it's like a bedroom setup. He's like living there. He's laying in the bed display, watching the TV display. Like, the store is black and empty. He's watching TV. He's knocking back a fifth of whatever. So all of a sudden, the power surge happens. He's like, oh, I can't believe this. He's half kind of tanked up. He doesn't want to deal with this. He's semi-stalking his wife, driving by the house, staring at the window. So, his mind is not ready for whatever shenanigans is happening with this electric. He goes downstairs. He starts messing with all the buttons. And then he like clicks those extra weird buttons, and like all the power goes out. He's like, what the? So as he's going back upstairs, he notices this lights coming through the wall. So this is the downstairs display room that he's went down to where the circuit breaker box is. And a few feet from that, he notices this light, a very thin beam of light, kind of like flashing in and out of existence through the wall. He's like, what the heck? So he walks over. His intent is just to kind of like put his ear, like touch the wall and put his ear to the wall to kind of, I guess, listen and see, is anything happening, on the other side of this wall? Like, what is this? Is like a door he never noticed. So he puts his hand, with the intent to put his hand in his ear to the wall, and he falls through. And that's how he ends up in the back rooms. He didn't know that he had a portal in that basement because it's just in a spot. It's just a blank wall from his POV. But because those random buttons, have turned out all the lights, and he so happens to be down there in the pitch dark, is how he sees this faint beam of light kind of flickering in and out of existence, and how he falls into that. So speeding up the story a little bit, he goes to Mary, his therapist. He's trying to convince her. He's an architect by trade. Well, he's an architect by education, not by trade, because he's been supporting his wife and he had to hurry up and get a job, which was buying this furniture store. So he's a little bit bitter about not actually getting to be an architect, but he still has the skills from his education. So he drew out this whole map of this area, and he's trying to show it to Mary. And he's like, this place just goes on and on. It's like this hidden area. And Mary's like, yeah. How many drinks have you had? Are you drunk right now? Now, Mary has her own secrets. Again, she's very mild-mannered, has a very soft-speaking voice, but she has her own secrets. She's been suffering from some nightmares ever since her childhood home was demolished so that they can make way for like some new condominiums or something like that. So she keeps like this little concrete cutout of like some handprints that she made with her mom in front of that house that was just demolished, and she kind of keeps it at her bedside, but it's also been giving her nightmares because her mom was suffering from some kind of like mental collapse. Newspapers on the windows, just hoarding things. Mary can't, as a little girl, can't go outside. Her mom is like, never go outside. They're everywhere, so she keeps having these dreams about just little messages and paranoias that her mom had. And I guess you can kind of see them perhaps as a premonition that maybe the mom had discovered the back rooms or something in the back. She had been to the back rooms, seen something, and that totally like washed her brain. And now she doesn't want to, go in any direction other than right in that house because she's scared of maybe falling into that again. And she doesn't want her daughter to fall into it. So Mary is also plagued by some traumas as well. So she's asking Clark, are you drunk? She's trying to be very calm, but she's really hesitant to, pick up what he's putting down about these hidden spaces behind his business. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to prove to you and you're going to owe me an apology. Keep in mind, Clark is still dealing in his mind with some things going on with his wife. So Mary is kind of at this point a stand-in. This is never said out loud, but it will become more obvious later that Mary is a stand-in for all the frustrations he has yet to be able to get out with his real wife, whom he's separated from and apparently hasn't seen or interacted with in some time. He's like, I'll prove to you, you're going to owe me an apology. So he recruits his assistant manager and her boyfriend to come video the whole adventure into the back rooms. Of course, that goes askew. In the middle of all this, even though the plot to me is moving at a fair pace, you do get a lot of random jump scares that you don't expect. They do a really good job in hiding the entity until that very last third act. And then you really get to see it in person and what it is supposed to represent for Clark in particular. So as I said, the trio, the Scooby-Doo gang, they go into the back rooms with the intent of Clark being able to capture video evidence of everything he's been seeing and experiencing down there. So his assistant manager's boyfriend volunteers to have a rope tied around him and go down this long tunnel to see what's down there. It's a very steep tunnel. Clark would not have been able to probably do it by himself. So the intent is that the boyfriend is going to go down there with the camera, film, and then they're going to tug him back up. Okay. And the whole time the assistant manager is like, no, babe, don't do it. And of course, the boyfriend is like, oh, got this, babe. Just tell my mom I love her if I don't come back. Literally a quote from the movie. He goes, they let him down this ramp that leads to this other hidden room space. He gets down there. So weird. He sees a t-shirt that he had wore earlier in the movie down there and just like a rancid pile of like clothes and just like random objects. He's like, yo, it stinks down here. I don't see anything, but it's really gross. So he's moving around. He's like, y'all have any more rope? I can look around more. And they're like, that's all the rope we got. So he gets as far as like another blackened room off to the side. And then he sees something move. Immediately, he does what you should always do. He turns and hauls tail. He's like, pull me up right now. Yank that bean. Like, pull me up. So they're pulling him up. He's like, fast. So finally, they pull him up. He's like, oh my God, he's freaking out. So they're like, what did you see? What's down there? He's like, just get this rope off of me and then I'll talk. I just need this rope off of me. And they're like, and as he's like he's like, what kind of knot? He's trying to get the knot off. All of a sudden, something starts pulling on the rope. You can guess what happens next. Whatever is down there yanks Mr. Boyfriend back and down into like the dungeon area. Blood-curdling screams. You see blood splashes. Of course, the next thing you know, totally by accident, Clark and his assistant manager go tumbling down this dark path as well. They end up there. The assistant manager sees all this blood and the boyfriend being dragged off. Am I allowed to curse? Anyway, she hauls it, like trying to save him. Clark picks up the camera. He's trying to run after her. Then the next thing you know, it kind of like Clark is able to turn around and see something behind him. And then it cuts back to the therapist. So then we're kind of pulled into the third act, which is more from the POV of Mary, the therapist. She gets this mysterious phone call message from Clark saying he's opened the window, he's not coming back. Mary, this is not explicitly said, but I think it links back to some dreams she's been having about her mom and about her mom not letting her open the window to the physical actual window to their house because her mom has mental issues, which could or could not be related to the back rooms. We don't get that side of it. We just get a lot of hints. So I believe that's the reason why Mary goes looking for Clark, is because she couldn't save her mom. Maybe she can save Clark, as far as this window thing. So she gets to the store, mail is piled up. There's this nasty fly moving around in there. And she's like wandering around the store trying to find out, like, where is everybody? The store looks abandoned. So she ends up in the back rooms herself. And we're already on spoilers, so let me just go straight for it. Clark actually turns out to be the villain. And the monster that has been stalking him, which eventually killed the assistant manager and the boyfriend, is a manifestation of his rage. I won't tell you exactly what this particular manifestation of rage looks like physically. I will let that be a surprise. Hopefully you'll go and watch and see it. But we find out that this monster that's roaming around in this particular part of the back rooms is no doubt a manifestation of his rage. He basically kidnaps the therapist, ties her up, and he wants to reenact that last night with his wife again. He's got a knife, he's like, I want to do the role play again, because they did role play in their therapy. He wants to do it again, but he's angrier this time. He's like, you are, and he even puts on this bloody fake wig on the therapist's head that's the same color as his wife's hair. And he's really going in. And finally, the therapist, Mary, loses her cool. She's under duress. She's been kidnapped. She doesn't know what's going to happen in the next 5 seconds. She finally tells him the truth. Clark, all of this is your fault. You didn't want to own up to anything in your life. You keep blaming other people for everything that you're feeling, going through. This is all your fault. But maybe you are just like that, as you said. That's fine. Let me go. You stay here in this place of freedom you found, but I need to leave. And he agrees. I think the point that's trying to be made with this particular scene is twofold. One is just that Clark needed to find his own safe space where he could truly just let that hidden rage within himself run loose. And he did. Second, and he accepted that rage, and that rage was a part of him and just needed to be on a rampage. And he found a high air quotes safe space to do that. Second, he needed somebody to acknowledge him as he is. He just wanted somebody to acknowledge that he is a monster. He's a hidden monster, and that they, aren't trying to change him. They just are telling him, be a monster. Just let me peace out. He just wanted to be himself, that monster, and he wanted somebody to acknowledge that monster in him. So it really was as easy as her pointing both of these things out and saying, I don't have anything to do with this. I've tried to help you. You are who you are. I don't have anything to do with this. You can stay down here as long as you like and do whatever, makes you feel good. I need to go. And he's like, okay. Makes sense to me. He goes to cut her bonds. He cuts one arm, and then you just hear the monster thumping, stalking towards him. And Clark goes, no. And then we get the reveal of the monster. Again, I don't want to get that part away, that particular part. And we get the reveal of the monster. And Clark is talking to the monster like, no. The monster being a physical manifestation of his rage. And he's like, no, it's fine. She knows how we are. She told us, she confirmed. We're just built like this. I'm just going to let her go, and we're just going to go on rampaging down here. Of course, Rage is not logical. So immediately, the rage in Clark that has come manifest from this other dimension immediately kills Clark, like brutally. So Mary is able to free her other arm and does what you're supposed to do. She haul tails, trying to get away from this entity. She even has a little fight out with him. She manages to find some stairs and basically is rescued by Async at the very last second. So we pretty much wrap it up. We switch from Clark's story in the Backrooms to Mary's story having not quite escaped the lore and horror of the Backrooms. Meaning now Async has her. And they're no longer an MRI company. They're a company studying some cosmic misplacement, this dimension that unfolded and is currently unfolding in many directions. As they say, portals are opening up everywhere. They don't know why. They're just trying to study it and get more info out of people who roamed through it. That's as far as they're going right now. They haven't talked about fixing it or warning people. And so Mary, of course, goes, oh, what's going to happen to me if I tell you all this? And, it's like, that's above me. The interviewer is like, that's above me. But, we can still talk, though. Just talk to me and tell me everything. Basically, she's probably going to be held, if not taken off the map completely, she's probably going to be held in Async's captivity for now until forever. They obviously don't want this information getting out to the public. They're not trying to warn people. They're not trying to find ways to patch up these other random holes that are opening up. So Mary is pretty much stuck there. And the movie kind of ends there. But again, everybody is kind of complaining about that. I think the main thing to keep in mind is that this is one additional story to the web series. And you can see that the web series, this is a companion piece, a full-fledged, full-length companion piece to the web series. This is one story, as we've got many stories on the web series. We got 1.5 full stories starting with Clark and kind of leading into Mary. They can go in so many directions with this. They can definitely make a sequel if they want to. I would love to see a sequel or even like a full 30-minute series on a streaming platform or a network. So that's my recap of the Backrooms. Highly recommended if you like, a slow twist and a slow turn, but still is going to make your mind go noodly. I love it. Anyways, that's my review. Check it out. Talk to you next time. Have an amazing day, whoever you are, wherever you are. All right, bye.